You are listening to the Marc Guzman Podcast Experience. In this episode, Jona Mendoza, the estate manager for Clos Pegase, a Napa Valley winery, pays us a visit and brings us 2 amazing bottles of wine. So we are live here with Jona Mendoza, and thanks for coming. Now, we've been buddies for a while.
Yeah.
I think I met you in 2005 or 6.
Right after I graduated high school, I believe.
Okay.
Which was 03. But I think we started really hanging out like around 05.
Yeah.
But I think I've heard of you through friends and whatnot.
Yeah.
I think
So it's been a
I
while.
was in high school, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
I know you recently just bought a house, so congratulations on
Thank you.
that.
Yeah, very
Right
excited.
in Napa, you were mentioning it's only just a few minutes from Silverado Trail.
Yeah. 3 minutes from Silverado Trail, 3 minutes to the nearest anything really. It's really
Yeah.
central, so we got really, really fortunate.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Neat.
Yeah.
So congrats.
Thank you.
on that
Thank
too.
you. Yeah, and thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah. Excited to have you. So you are with, hopefully I don't butcher the winery name here, Clos Pegase.
Clos Pegase. Yeah, so
Clos Pegase.
it's French.
Okay.
Clos Pegase is basically Clos, spelled CLOS.
Okay.
The French have a lot of words that have a whole bunch of silent letters
Yep.
in there. So Clos basically means enclosure or closed.
Okay.
The idea was that everything happened within the estate. So everything happened right there at the property. And Pegasus is basically Pegasus. It goes back to the Greek mythology.
Okay.
That Pegasus with his hoofs basically started the spring of muses, which basically was the creation of art and wine. So Pegasus basically has a correlation between art and wine. And at the winery where I work at Clos Pegase, we have a good amount of art. The original owners were huge, avid art collectors. They had a lot of incredible pieces, a lot of sculptures. But about 5 years ago, they sold the property to Vintage Wine Estates, who now owns Clos Pegase. And with that, they took a lot of their artwork and a lot of their sculptures, and they donated it to UC Davis.
Okay.
So that's where you'll find a lot of that artwork. But if you go to the winery, there's a lot of older vintages that have the labels of a lot of these one-of-a-kind art pieces,
Okay.
which are really, really incredible. They definitely really tell the story. But this property is something that you really have to be there to really experience it. We have caves, gigantic building. It's pretty cool.
Now, are you off 29 or Silverado Trail? Or in
Both,
between?
actually. It's Dunawheel Lane. Head up north
Okay.
on either Trail or 29, and you'll find us right on Dunawheel Lane, right at 1060 Dunawheel Lane in Calistoga. So
Okay.
in the farther northern part of the valley.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Sweet. So we're going to be trying here. Which one is this?
So we have the Sauvignon Blanc first. We have our 2016 Mitsuko's Vineyard Sauvignon Blanc. This is in the Carneros region. Now, of course, the valley itself, Napa, is about 38 miles long and about 5 miles wide at its widest point. And every mile you drive north, it gets warmer by half a degree. And this is very true in the summer days. In the fall, winter days, is the difference is few lower degrees.
Mhm.
But in the summer, I mean, you can be in the Carneros region where the Sauvignon Blanc is grown. It can be 80 degrees. By the time you get to Calistoga, it can be 96 degrees. In Napa, already it's about 20 degrees warmer than San Francisco. So it could be 65 degrees in San Francisco, 85 degrees in Carneros, and then you can get to 100 degrees in Calistoga.
Wow.
So huge difference between where we grow the Sauvignon Blanc and where the winery is. But Sauvignon Blanc, being that it's a Bordeaux style variety, it's used to warmer weather, but being that we grow it in a slightly cooler region, it gives us the chance to really ripen with a really nice balance.
Okay.
And it's all about balance. When you're talking about wine, you want to really get to that right acidity level, right sugar level. And a lot of the winemakers pick based on their flavor. They pop a couple of grapes in their mouth and they're like, oh, we have to pick tonight. And it happens a lot of it like that. So it's all about that balance. But the Sauvignon Blanc is very clean, very crisp, very refreshing. On hot summer days, this is definitely what you want to be enjoying, is for sure.
Yeah, it smells great right now.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, do you have any preference on serving wine chilled or at room temperature? 'Cause I've heard both ways.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of personal preference. I like my whites chilled. Definitely, wines have a substance that the temperature is definitely going to change the way that the wine tastes. If a white wine, let's say for example Chardonnay or the Sauvignon Blanc, if you were to enjoy it at room temperature, it would showcase a lot of the aggressive characteristics that you don't necessarily would enjoy in a white wine. So you
Hmm.
enjoy it colder, so it definitely hides a little bit of those aggressive notes, and it kind of brings out more of the fruit, more of that pop, more of that refreshing
Yeah.
characteristic. To where red wine, it would hide those characteristics that you really enjoy. So some of those tannins, some of the structure that you get on Cabernet Sauvignon, if you enjoy it cold, it would hide a lot of that. So you want to have it either at, I want to say 65 degrees for my reds, and I
Okay.
want to have my whites between 50 to 55, so slightly
Okay.
colder. But yeah, I've had friends that like their reds slightly colder, some
Yeah.
slightly warmer. So it's all preference.
Yeah. My personal preference, I mean, I like it both ways, like with white wines,
Hmm.
chilled or room temperature. It's very interesting to see how the flavors change both ways.
Oh, absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
and that's the fun thing about wine. Wine is ever changing, not only in the bottle but in the glass as you're drinking it. As long as the oxygen hits it and it starts opening up a little bit, and the wine's gonna change. As you're enjoying it. So
Yeah.
it's a fun part about wine, and that's what I love about the wine. The wine is always changing, and there's not a single person in the world that's gonna know everything about wine.
Yeah.
There's always something new to learn out there, which is quite fun.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So why don't we talk a little bit of how you ended up in this position?
Yeah.
I know you have a big history in Napa. You've worked at restaurants, you
Hmm.
managed
Yeah,
restaurants, you then even did Napa private tours at one point,
I did.
and you even went to Pennsylvania, came back,
Yeah.
and back into Napa, and now here you are.
Yep, yep. And I'm the estate manager at Clos Pegase. Pretty awesome little winery. But yeah, I've been in the valley for, let's say, 12 years. I've been working in Napa. For the first two, I commuted. Definitely, it was a change of pace. But I've always been in the restaurant industry. I think when I met you, I might have been working either at Chevy's or maybe even at the Cheesecake Factory, which was back in the day.
Yeah.
But my family and I was still living with my parents. We moved to Vallejo, and the commute from Vallejo to Corte Madera was just a little too long. And I had a lot of friends that told me that the wine industry and the restaurant world in Napa were pretty legit, and that you can
And that's
make
where
some good
things are
money.
happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was around the year 2000 and late 2004, early 2005. I had been a bartender. I had been a server, but I didn't have any wine knowledge. So when I went up to Napa, I couldn't just come in as a bartender or a server. I actually needed to step it down a notch a little bit. So I started as a busser, and I started working at Bistro Gentil, which is a great French bistro right then in Yountville.
Okay.
Did Bistro Gentil for very little. Then I got a job as also a busser at Zare, which is now closed. It's no
Interesting. So
longer.
that's how you learned your way and how you got yourself into the wine world.
Yeah, yeah. I start and Zare was actually the basically location where it all got started, because after a few months of being at Zare, the then manager Joel Tavizon, he made me a bartender. He was like, "Hey, we need a bartender. Let's put you into bartender." And I was like, "Well, I don't know anything about wine." He was like, "We'll teach you. Don't worry. We'll be good." And as a bartender, you get to really create relationship with a lot of guests, because when you're a server, people come in to eat, they want to have dinner, they want to get out. But when they go and sit at the bar, they kind of want to have a conversation with the bartender. They kind of want to get entertained a little bit. You're there for more for the scene than to have a private one-on-one conversation. So I got to meet a lot of great people, and some of these people were Angela Lapanza and Linda Lapanza,
Okay.
who she was the daughter of Bob and Blanca Hartwell, who owned Hartwell Vineyards.
Okay.
And they approached me. They were like, "Hey, we want you to work for us." And at that point, I wasn't necessarily sure if I wanted to make the move to the wine world. I was very comfortable with the food world, so I was like, "Oh, let me think about it a little bit." And after a few months, I was like, "You know what? I think it's time to step into the wine world." And I gave her a call, and I was like, "Hey, I think I'm ready to get into the wine world." And she was like, "Oh, well, we just hired somebody." I was like, "Oh no," kind of missed the opportunity. But like a week later, said that the person they had hired never showed up. So they were like, "Hey, why don't you come in and work for us?" So then I started working on Hartwell Vineyards. Um, while at the same time I was bartending, I got another job bartending at Press in San Helena.
Okay.
So back then, when I was single and had no kids, I always had two jobs, and I think you remember me always being busy. So I got the job at Hartwell Vineyards, and then I started bartending at Press in San Helena, and that's where I met a lot of great people as well. Um, in between working at Hartwell and Press, this was about, let's say, 2 years worth of 2.5 years in between. I met the owner of Blackbird Vineyards, Michael Polensky,
Okay.
and he was opening this place called Masonry in Yountville. And then he had asked me to work for him as well. So then I left press to go work at Masonry, and I was working at Hartwell and Masonry. And while I was doing that, just doing my own personal things, I met the owner, or I met Ariel Ceja, who
Okay.
is the kid of the Ceja Vineyards, basically.
Yeah, I remember they had their restaurant in downtown Napa.
Yeah. So he was opening Bistro Sabor right in downtown Napa, and he had asked me to go work for him. And at that point, had already been in the wine industry for about 2.5 years. Wanted to really get back into the restaurant world. So I left both Masonry and Hartwell to go and be the general manager of Bistro Sabor in downtown Napa, which was a great spot. It was amazing, very fast, very, very casual restaurant. It's fast casual. You order at the counter. We'll give you.
You guys had dancing at nighttime too, right?
We did, yeah. We started Salsa Saturdays, and it was a huge success. We would see a lot of great people.
That place was always packed every time I went by.
Absolutely, yeah. Remember you coming in. But we didn't have a liquor license, so our margins were not as great as they could have been, and the food was very inexpensive. The most expensive dish at that restaurant was, I want to say, probably $14, which in Napa, it's really, really inexpensive. I mean, right now you can't go and have a cocktail under $12, $13 at any restaurant in Napa. So the prices are definitely really, really high.
And that was Peruvian food too, right?
Yeah, it was Latin American sort of street foods was the fare,
Okay.
but it was heavy Mexican, and then we had a little bit of Salvadorian, a little bit of Peruvian, and a little bit of mix of basically a lot of different flavors. But yeah. So we had a couple Peruvian dishes. Lomo saltado was one of the most favorite ones, and I really, really do miss the cuisine there. The downtown local Napa people love that restaurant, and I still hear today about it. Like, oh my God, we gotta open that. We have to do something. So I was there for about 2.5 years, and I met my wife, and I was working 12-hour days basically. And when my wife and I got pregnant, I couldn't necessarily afford to work 12-hour days. I needed to basically find a job that would be more family healthy. And I left Bistro Sabor, and I did a small little stint in between at Etoile, which was the restaurant at Domaine Chandon.
Okay.
It had a Michelin star, really, really great food. Perry Hoffman's the chef, or was the chef. The restaurant since has closed. He's now over at Shed in Healdsburg, which is super cool. So I worked at Etoile for just a little bit. Then I went to go work at Brown Estate. And that place is really, really great for Zinfandels up on the mountains in the Clos Valley. Yeah, that was incredible family.
I'm a fan of their wines too.
Yeah, their wines are delicious. I think they make one of the best Zinfandels in the valley, and their Sauv Blanc and Rosé are really great. But Petit Syrah, it's one of the wines that is, little by little gaining a lot of recognition, and a lot of people make some great Petit Syrahs in Napa now. So the Cabernet Sauvignon is definitely king. When I say Petit Syrah is definitely a strong contender and what people really are looking for when they go to Napa.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's up to, I think, what they say, 6,000 different types of grapes that you can make wine out of.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's tons, and 40% of Napa Valley's harvest is Cabernet Sauvignon. So Cabernet Sauvignon is definitely king. But if you find a really good Petit Syrah or a really good Cabernet Franc or Melvedras, little small production varieties, those are definitely the gems in the valley.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do right now is find wines that are made with grapes I haven't tried before.
Oh, yeah.
That's been a very interesting project because it really forces you to try a big chunk of, there's so much wine out there that's amazing.
A lot. Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing I actually like to do is find wines between $10 and $15.
Right.
And it's amazing how many good wines are in that range.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess right now Australian wines are super cheap.
They are.
And there's a lot of good ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're trying to definitely move a lot of the inventory, and it's of course very hard to get the wines that they probably feel are like the really small production, really, gems of their area. Just like a lot of the wineries in Napa Valley, you can't find a lot of those wines available in the market. So I'm sure the wines that we're getting here from Australia are the ones that are really good, that have good amount of production that comes out this way. But there's probably still just incredible wines out there that we don't know about that are just really, really incredible.
Now, so that's something very interesting. I know a lot of wineries in Napa do not sell their wine online or in stores. Yeah. Why is that?
It's better margin.
Okay.
Because then if you're doing direct to consumer, we call it DTC. If you're doing direct to consumer sales, you're basically selling the wine for retail price. Where if you're selling a wholesale or restaurants, you have to give them the wholesale discount, which is 33%. Some wholesalers or some restaurants buy enough to where they can be like, all right, look, instead of getting 33%, can you give me more of a discount and I'll buy even more? So for wineries that produce 3,000 cases, it doesn't make sense for them to sell a lot of their wine wholesale because they're not going to make a lot of money selling it wholesale. They much rather do direct to consumer. But a lot of times, the small family wineries don't have the resources to be able to get the exposure that they want to be in every market out there. But there's also something about being a small production family wine that um, you don't necessarily want to be that available. You
Hmm.
have that. Hey, you can buy my wine here at the winery because you won't be able to find me in any market in any state in the United States. So then it makes people want to buy the wine right there and then when they're visiting.
And it's
Um,
amazing that Napa has that kind of demand where a lot of wineries can do that.
oh,
Yeah, the
absolutely,
number
yeah.
of tourists that come into Napa is just amazing.
Yeah, I think I don't know the exact numbers, but I've heard for a long time that it's the second most visited spot in California, second to Disneyland. So the numbers that come in are just outstanding. I think I read in 2012 Napa saw 3.3 million people come to Napa, and they generated I think $8 billion in sales. Most of it was hotels, but a lot of it was the restaurants and the wineries.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of there's 400 plus wineries in the Napa Valley. About 95% of them are family owned, and probably about 70% of those, maybe a little more, produce less than 10,000 cases. And when you're doing 10,000 cases or less, you're basically considered a boutique winery. So you're really really small. But I think one of the most special things about Napa it's how a lot of people believe that just because it's got the name Napa, that it's that Napa produces so much wine and it's just all over the place. And this it's actually a fun game that I play with a lot of my guests that come to the winery. Is I ask them, out of all the wines made in the United States, California produces 98% of the wines made in the United States, and basically
California produces 98%.
of the wines in the United States. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and then the United States is the fourth largest producer in the world. So essentially, California is the fourth largest producer in the world. But out of all the wine that is made in California, what percentage would you say comes from Napa?
Comes from Napa.
Yeah.
I think if you asked me that question maybe 15 years ago, I would say about 80, 90%.
Mm-hmm.
I think now you're probably looking at about 25, 30%.
Yeah, yeah. That's four. It's actually the percentage. Only 4% of the wines made in California come from Napa. So really, really small. But yeah, a lot of people still to today, they think it's 80, 90. Very few say, oh, maybe like 20, 30. But yeah, in reality, only 4%.
That's amazing.
Tiny, tiny. And in retrospect to the world, Napa produces 0.04% of the wine in the world. So super, super small. So it's basically a little dot in the map
That's
of wine
incredible.
world.
So, what are some of the other areas in California? I know Lodi
Mhm.
is one area, Paso Robles, Mendocino County.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
So you have Sonoma, which is they have a lot of different little regions within Sonoma, but they're in the Sonoma County, so they're known as AVAs, American Viticulture Areas. And Napa became one in 1981. They were the first to do so in all of California. I think a few months later, Sonoma got theirs. But you have Sonoma, but you also have, like I said, Paso Robles. You have the Santa Barbara Hills. You have Lodi. You can go up north. Can't really remember the name of this area, but you have a lot of growing regions in Napa. But the area that has the most vineyards, basically, it's in the Central Valley, which is south of where Lodi is. All of that's where you get a lot of your larger producers. That's where they grow their fruit. Where a
okay.
lot of the farming out there is concentrating more on the quantity rather than the quality of the wine, because
So
they're
there's
selling
more.
their
So there's more grapes grown in Lodi than in Napa.
not in Lodi, in the southern part. So it's more like
Okay.
in the Central Valley of California,
Okay.
to like Fresno, that
Okay.
area. I don't know exact production quantities in Lodi. They might be producing a little more, but I'm not 100% sure how big Lodi is, or
Okay.
or how many cases they're producing. But the Fresno area, all of that's where they get a lot of the bulk wine, basically.
Yeah.
So you get you're buying per gallon rather than for anything else. So it's more about the quantity. So they're trying to get as much juice as possible in
Yeah.
there. And then that's where you get a lot of the gigantic trucks and tanks, and that's where you get a lot of your Gallo and a lot of your your $2 chuck type of stuff that's going on
Okay.
there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then after Brown Estates,
Mhm.
where did you go?
So Brown Estates, I was recruited to work for Napa Private Tours, which is a touring company in Napa.
And that probably exposed you to a lot more
Oh yeah,
wineries.
yeah. Being out in the road, meeting guests that have specific needs that want to go to specific wineries. So you base your tours according to what the guests are looking for. So I got to see. I mean, out of the 400 plus wineries in the valley, I probably got to visit 200 plus in the valley, just as driving with different guests, and on my own as well, visiting different wineries. But yeah, I was exposed to a lot of much bigger range of where to go, and it also opened me to Sonoma as well. And while I was in Napa Private Tours, they also started the company Sonoma Private Tours.
Okay.
So Sonoma is much larger. You have the southern part of Sonoma. You have Sonoma Coast. You have Healdsburg. You have Kenwood, Glen Ellen, Sebastopol, Russian River. I mean, it's really big. And it's a lot of fun just going to the little different regions of Sonoma and seeing the different topography, and
Yeah.
it's quite fun. But while I was at Napa Private Tours, my buddy from Pennsylvania, he had asked me to go and open a restaurant with him out in Pennsylvania. It was going to be his second restaurant that he was going to be opening. So I convinced the wife, and my wife was pregnant at the time, and we didn't want to necessarily travel with the newborn. We're like, it's probably best if the baby's still in the belly. That way we can make the way out there. And we did a nice little 7-day road trip all the way to Pennsylvania. But when I got there, the restaurant that we had planned to be open was basically kept getting pushed back, and it was more for permitting reasons. The building that they had purchased, they were gonna use 2/3 for one thing and the other third for the restaurant, and they needed to do the lighting and the plumbing and everything for the whole entire building. So the permits just kept getting delayed, and because we traveled there sooner rather than later, we were running out of money. And after the 5 months that we were there, my wife and I, we basically decided that it was best for our interest to pull the plug on Pennsylvania and then come back to Napa before it was too late, before our debt was just like ridiculously high. So we we packed our bags, and after being in Pennsylvania for 5 months, we made the trek back here. And I was very very fortunate. I had a completely different idea of what I wanted to do when I came back here. I was like, all right, it's gonna be a clean slate. Maybe I want to open a restaurant of my own out here, maybe a Peruvian restaurant. There's no Peruvian restaurants out in Napa. But the company that I was working for, Napa Private Tours, he was like, hey, when you come back, we'll just make it look like you went on a really long vacation, and then you can just start working for us again. And because of we were in such high debt, I was not gonna wait around. I was like, let's start working right away.
Yeah.
So then I started working with Napa Private Tours again. And at the beginning of this month, I was approached by the senior director of tasting rooms for Vintage Wine Estates.
Okay.
And she told me that there was a position available as the state manager of the winery. And then, here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been quite a ride, and I'm very very fortunate and very happy to to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
With wine, and this might be a very subjective question, but what do you, in your eyes, what makes a wine good?
Balance.
Balance?
Yeah, balance. Whenever I get
So describe balance a little bit more. I know you touched on it just briefly a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
But so many people talk about balance of wine, balance of wine.
Right.
But break it down. What does that really mean?
So for a white wine, it's having a really nice bright entrance, and of course depending on what wine you're drinking. So we'll explain the Sauvignon Blanc,
and that'll be different from a Chardonnay.
Oh, absolutely, and then a Riesling or a Moscato. All of those are going to have so many different characteristics that depending on what you're looking for, you might find or you might not find. So the Sauvignon Blanc, as long as it's got a really nice bright entrance, it kind of tickles your palate in the middle, and when you drink it, you get that sort of the acidity that kind of comes from the back end of the palate and makes you pucker a little bit. Whenever wine's got all those three characteristics, for me the wine is balanced. Some people might be looking for different things. They might be looking for more tropical notes, or they might be looking for a little more sweet notes. Whenever a wine hits me both in the front, in the middle, and in the back, for me that wine is balanced. When we're talking about red wine, it's being able to have those tannins in the front, and having those tannins kind of make your lips stick to your teeth a little bit, having that fruit in the middle, and when you swallow the wine, it's going to have a good amount of acidity as well. That's going to make you pucker, and then that pucker is going to make your mouth water basically, and that wateriness is going to come forward and is going to complement the tannins that are in the front. So whenever a wine's got that, for me, that's balance.
Okay.
So that's what I look forward to in a wine. So I explore the wine, and I always tell my guests, don't judge a wine by its first sip. Wine's got a lot of things going on. It's got acidity, it's got alcohol. It's got tannins,
And you have to let it breathe too.
You gotta let it breathe. Yeah, I mean, and sometimes some wines are made to be pop the cork open and go for it. Some wines will need definitely to breathe. I remember when I was working at Press, had this gentleman who was bringing wines from the '70s, and we would pop open the bottle, and they wouldn't have a lot of expression. It was just tight. There was not much going on. So we put that bad boy in a decanter for about an hour. And after an hour, we poured it in the glass, and then you can really feel that fruit come forward, and it was just that the structure that would come through as well. So yeah, the wines, it's a
You said that was wine from the 70s?
yeah. He was bringing. This was back in the early mid 2000s. He was bringing wines from the '70s. Like I think he was bringing '78, '79. The old world wines is what they call it. Those wines are made to be aged. And there's still winemakers out there that are making the wines to be able to be aged. But a lot of the winemakers nowadays, they're making the wines a little more fruit forward, so you can drink them, and then you can buy some more, and then you can drink some more, and then you can buy some more. So
They're not meant for long-term aging. Then.
you could
Okay.
for collectors, and there are specific wineries that focus on that. But there are wineries for example, for our winery, we have wines that we would want you to enjoy any day, every day, any month, any year. But then we have wines that are tasting good now, but will do better with time. So depending on what you're really looking for.
So you'll recommend to customers, hey, hold this wine for 2 years or hold it for 5 or 10 years, then it'll be the best.
Yeah, if when they taste it, they feel like, it wasn't necessarily my favorite. Like, you might want to give it a little more time. And it's just all about the expression of the wine. But yeah, it's so what you're looking for. If there's a wine you like the way that it's drinking now, why wait?
Yeah. Now, do you sell futures?
We don't sell futures. No, we
Okay.
don't. There are a few wineries out in the valley that sell futures, and they're very successful at it. But no, we like to definitely focus on what we've already bottled and what we have in the tasting room, so we can showcase it, and then we can move that inventory. Rather than, we still have a good amount of inventory in our property that we wouldn't make sense to really sell futures.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, buying futures is interesting. It's always like a little bit of a gamble.
yeah,
Now, if you buy from a winery that has a really good reputation, their wines are pretty consistent, then you have a pretty good idea of how it's going to come out. But
Yeah.
there's so many things that change along the way that
absolutely.
you never really know.
Yeah, especially if you're buying a future, you're basically probably even tasting it out of the barrel.
Yeah.
So the wine's not even 100% complete. It's still gonna spend a good amount of time in the barrel. It might go through one more blending session because when you have one barrel, it's not like they're gonna grab the barrel and put it in the bottle. They're gonna grab other barrels, put it in a big tank, and then put it in a bottle. So they're gonna be doing a little bit of blending, even though it could be the same exact barrel, the same exact grape. You might have different humidity levels in certain areas of the caves, and that might change the wine a little bit. So yeah, buying futures, you're not gonna get what you're tasting right there and then. But a lot of times the wineries, the wineries give you good discounts when you buy futures.
Yeah.
So
And probably for the average consumer, would you recommend kind of just stay away from futures?
I wouldn't say stay away. I would say know what to expect. If you're drinking the barrel and you're like, oh man, I really really like this, it's not gonna be the same when you bottle it. So
Yeah.
I would say, it's more sure when you buy from the bottle. However, when you buy from the bottle, it's still aging. So if you're gonna drink it right there and then, it's perfect. But if you're gonna buy that bottle and drink it 2-3 years from there, then it would be the same as buying a future because the wine is gonna change. It's gonna develop. So
Yeah. Yeah. Now, speaking of change, briefly before we got on the air here, we were talking about Napa and the industry
Mhm.
and the people who work out in the fields.
definitely.
So I've found that like really fascinating. So why don't you explain what's going on?
Yeah. So, of course, a lot of it has to do with the immigration things that are going on in the public world right now. In politics, I should say. A lot of people are afraid to come up to to do farming work. They're not migrating as much. But a lot of the farm workers that are normally in Napa doing field work, they're being offered more money to go trim marijuana in Mendocino than to work in the fields in Napa. So we're actually having a labor shortage in Napa Valley right now. And I would actually say that for all of the wine country. So Sonoma, Lodi, Napa, every wine region or farming region is having problems.
And I imagine that's going to get worse with 2018 being fully legal here in California.
Oh yeah, the amount of money that's gonna be rolling around for marijuana, it's definitely gonna in the farming world, it's gonna trump anything that has
Yeah.
to do with farming. But a lot of the wineries, they're trying to see how they can compensate with having field workers, and I would
And
say probably 90% of wineries in Valley pick by hand, so they're using these laborers. But there are wineries that are gonna be forced to go use mechanized process just because they can't have the people to pick their fruit right there and then.
and you said some of these field workers are getting paid 2 times or 2.5 times
Yeah.
more, and they're getting paid cash,
Cash.
not payroll.
Yeah. So usually I would say an average field worker in Napa, they're getting around $15 to $16 an hour. And that's some of them. Most of the wineries, they can't really afford to pay that much. And these guys in Mendoza, they're getting $35 more cash per hour. So a lot of the field workers that are here basically to send money back home or to really sustain their family, it's not up to, it's for them, it's not the luxury to say, oh, I work in the Napa Valley. They're trying to make ends meet, so they're
Mhm.
gonna do it any way possible. So if they're gonna offer them $35 an hour cash to trim marijuana, they're gonna do it.
So do you think the price of wines are eventually going to drop in Napa?
I don't think they're gonna drop. I think they might stay the same, and if wineries have to pay their field workers more to keep them there,
Prices go up.
it might even have to go up. But the demand of a lot of these wineries wines are so huge that, I mean, you can just see the prices keep going up and up and up. It's really difficult to find a $20, $30 Cabernet Sauvignon. You can find good amount of $15 to $30 wines out in Napa, but they're not gonna be your Cabernet Sauvignons.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find your Tocolan, your Beckstoffer, Cabernet Sauvignons for that price. Everything has premium, super premium prices are $100 nowadays for a Cabernet Sauvignon is not necessarily even expensive. I think
Yeah.
that's average. You have wineries that charge 400, 500. Some of them charge over $1,000 per bottle, and they sell out.
Yeah.
So the demand is there.
Yeah.
So as long as the demand is there, I think the people are not gonna shy away.
Yeah. Now, going back to your winery, so what are the different types your winery makes here? So, I mean, well, you brought Sauvignon Blanc here,
Mhm.
and what else did you bring?
Then we
here?
have our Atlas Peak Cabernet Sauvignon. We have a good number of wines. We have a Chardonnay. We have two different Chardonnays. We have a Chardonnay we call Homage, and then we have our Mitsuko's Vineyard Chardonnay that's grown in the same vineyard that the Sauvignon Blanc is.
And who's the winemaker?
Our winemaker is Robin. He's been with us since the 2015 vintage.
Okay.
So the 2013 that you're gonna try, it's from a different winemaker. And I've only been at Clos Pegase for a few months, so I can't really remember the name of the previous winemaker. But a lot of our wines are gonna be changing their winemaker in the 2015 vintage. So the 16 and the 13 that we have here are different.
Okay.
Different winemakers.
Now, is the winemaker solely with your winery, or do they hop around?
No.
Solely with your winery?
He's solely with a winery, but
Okay.
he does consult. He does have his own label that he
Okay.
makes in the same property. And then, being that we're part of the vintage wine estates, we do make other wineries wines in our property. So then he helps out on those as well. More
Okay.
like more of a consultant. But yeah, he's our winemaker.
Quite a few
for-
winemakers do that, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, they hop around and make different wines, and sometimes they put their name on it, other times they don't.
Yeah.
Which makes it interesting, because if you're a fan of a specific winemaker and you really do your research, you can find some amazing wines that don't have their name that might be even cheaper, right?
yeah, because they don't have their names.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, because they don't have the names, the prices will go down. There's this guy. His name is Philippe Melka. I think he consults for about 12 different wineries. So he's the winemaker. He's, I guess, the acting winemaker for a lot of these wineries. But when you're a winemaker, you kind of just your job kind of thins you out. You're being pulled from a lot of different locations. So a lot of times these winemakers are more consultant winemakers, and they have a lot of the cellar crew do all that grunt work. But yeah, these guys have the gift of being able to know how to or when to pick the grape, how to ferment it, to either use brand new French oak barrels or old barrels or American barrels or stainless steel tanks or concrete eggs.
And that's all
of that.
science in itself. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And then just the amount of burning of the interior of the barrel changes everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Even the grooving.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like if you cut in vertical slits, you can also expand the volume of the oak
exposure.
barrel. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they do that. There's this winery that actually gives you. I think they have a few barrels that are sort of cut in the middle, and they have the different styles of toast levels and the
Toast
different
levels, yeah.
grooves and all that stuff. Yeah, all of that's gonna be. It's gonna change the characteristics of the wine. So it's gonna be so different.
Yeah.
So
So is this cab your staple at the winery?
Not this cab. We do have an homage Cabernet Sauvignon that retails at 125.
Okay.
But this Atlas Peak cab is the Cabernet Sauvignon that we have on our tasting menu right now. This
Okay.
is the one.
And how
we
much
have.
is this one?
75.
Okay. And how much is a Sauvignon Blanc?
22.
Okay.
22. Yeah. So this is the one we have in our menu at the moment. And when the guests go to the winery, they get to try basically our rosé, our Sauvignon Blanc, our Chardonnay, our Pinot Noir, and then this Atlas Peak Cabernet Sauvignon, which is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon. And Atlas Peak, such as also Carneros, they're sub-AVAs of the Napa Valley. So you have the Napa Valley AVA, and then inside the Napa Valley, you have 16 different little regions that have been able to
Are those
showcase.
appellations?
Yeah, the appellations.
Okay.
They
There
showcase
used to
at
be
the
13, so now there's 16.
There's
right?
16. Yeah. Well, it's sort of like a trick question. A lot of people say like, "Oh, how many AVAs are in Napa?" A lot of them say 16, but it's truly 17 when you really count the Napa Valley
Okay.
as one, and then the 16 inside.
Okay.
But yeah, you have Howell Mountain, Childs Valley, Wild Horse, Atlas Peak. I mean, they're
Yeah, the number 13 always sticks with me because this was years ago, maybe 2004 or 5. I had a bottle of wine called 13,
Mhm.
and they took grapes from each one of the different appellations.
Oh yeah.
And because there were 13, they called the wine 13.
13.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's this winery who does barrel tastings of all now 16 appellations, and you actually get to try every single barrel from these different appellations, and you get to play winemaker for the day. So they give you all the tools to be able to blend your own wine, and when you walk out of this experience, you have a bottle of wine that you've made yourself from all the 60 different AVAs.
Oh, that's really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to Visa Tui and did like a winemaking course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Kim and I went there, and it was probably a 3-hour long course. They gave you a little food at the end,
Mhm.
but it was interesting because they gave you 100% Syrah, Cab, Merlot, and then you got to go in and mix your own wine,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So they showed you the basics of it and how the flavors change. So that was really fun and interesting to do.
Oh yeah, and just like when you give a chef a lot of different ingredients to create layers, you give a winemaker a few different extra grapes to, and then tell them, all right, we're gonna ferment this on a really expensive, super toasted French oak barrel, and then we're gonna try this wine on a neutral American French oak barrel, and this on stainless steel, and kind of just take percentage of all three of them and blend them together, and then just see how it all goes.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating. That's why I think the art form comes, the blending seminars, because you can also have 100% Cabernet Sauvignon, but it could also be a blend. It could be the different toast levels in the barrels. It can be the different grooves in the barrels. It could be American, French oak, Belgian barrels. All of that can just change the complexity of the wine. And even though a lot of the wineries say, "Oh, it's 100% wine," it could be a blend.
Yeah, and that I was just going to bring that up because in order to be called 100% of a certain grape, it just has to be 75%.
75% of the grapes to be able to classify it as the variety that's on the label. Yeah, so 75% for the grape, 85% for the location, such as Napa Valley or Carneros or Atlas Peak, and then 95% for the vintage. So in order for you to have 2016, then 95% of the fruit better be picked on that year.
Okay.
That's what you see a lot of times, sparkling wines that don't have a vintage, because they usually blend 5 to 10% of another wine into the wine that they're about to bottle. So if you ever see a sparkling wine that has a vintage, doesn't necessarily make it better. It was just different that year, and the winemaker didn't want to blend anything to it.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, let's give it a try here.
Yeah, it's Cabernet Sauvignon. It's gonna be nice, good fruit on this Cabernet Sauvignon. It definitely has some nice grip going down, but definitely more of your fruit forward. Now,
Love
something
the smell to
I
it.
like to tell my guests as well is that wine, alcohol weighs more than air. So you have the southern hemisphere part of the glass, and you have the northern hemisphere part of the glass, so the top part and the bottom. When you smell the wine on the bottom part of the glass, you got to pick up a lot of the characteristics that the wine has. The fruit, the structure is going to come out in the nose as well, but you're going to get a lot of that heat. A little bit of the alcohol is going to come out because you're smelling the wine really closely. To where you smell the wine in the top, back here on the bottom of the glass is where all that fruit's going to hang out. So you smell it on the top, you're going to pick up a lot more of the softer notes. Like I got a
Wow.
little bit of chocolate when I was on the
That's
top.
night and day.
Yeah, absolutely. From between the two.
That's a simple tip that I don't think anyone's ever explained that to me, and that's amazing.
Yeah, so I usually like to start from the bottom and then move my nose to the top. That way I can get a lot of the wine notes and then bring it up to the top. It's a little softer.
I'm gonna be doing that from now on.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, you get to really explore more of what the wine's got to offer when you do that.
Yeah, I'm gonna start quizzing every single whenever I go wine tasting. Just quiz every bartender there. It's amazing, and this wine's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, this wine, it's got a little bit of figs, right? A little bit of prunes right there at the end, but the tannins, it kind of lingers in your palate a little bit, just stays there. It's kind of chewy at the end.
So I definitely like to swirl the wine around.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I don't see a lot of people doing.
Swirl in your in your mouth.
Yeah,
yeah,
just swish it around
Mhm.
and just really get the flavors everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I like to get it on top of my gums, on the bottom of my tongue, and the back of my teeth. I mean, everywhere. And that's how, you get taste notes. Yeah, obviously it's all in your tongue, but when you put the wine in different areas of your palate, it kind of opens up more. I don't
Yeah.
know I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, you get to really become one with the wine a little more when you
Yeah.
do that.
yeah. This is a very great cab. Tannins are not super strong on this. I mean, I'm a personal fan of really strong tannins. I love that feeling of just drying up. Yeah,
Mhm. Me too, man.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great wine though.
Yeah, there's definitely a little softer, a little more elegant. The tannins are there, the structure's there, but it's definitely one of the wines that you want to enjoy. I would say this wine probably will be best in about 5 years, but I mean, I'll probably everything that I have at home, I'll probably drink before then.
Well, this is a 2013.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you think in 5 years is
I think it's gonna be incredible in 5 years. Yeah,
interesting?
more of that fruit's gonna be present. It's gonna have a little more of that gaminess too, so a little more of that sort of barnyard earth notes are gonna come through.
Yep.
And a lot of that fruit's gonna remain there, so it's gonna get better.
Now, what about the Sauvignon Blanc? I know most people don't age a white wine
Mhm.
because it can turn into vinegar at some point.
Mhm.
But usually, how long can you hold them for?
This one, Sauvignon Blancs are made to be enjoyed definitely relatively soon. So I would say you could keep it for 3 years, but I would be surprised if it's still good then.
Okay.
The Sauvignon Blancs are definitely made to be enjoyed. This is 2016. I'm thinking if I'm drinking it 2016 and 2018, it's probably going to be, sort of like towards the end of the line. You want to drink it relatively sooner. Now, there are wineries out there that are making Sauvignon Blancs to be aged. Like there's this winery that's making $150 Sauvignon Blanc. It's insane.
Wow.
And they're selling. People are buying it.
But
So
how long can you hold that for?
that probably you can hold for probably 5 years, maybe a little more. But it's probably more creamier. It's got a little more structure, a little more depth for being a Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're getting very innovative with the Sauvignon Blanc in Napa for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, are there any regions and this could be worldwide, any wine region that's catching your eye right now? Maybe something up and coming that you just see as a trend, or maybe it's a personal favorite of yours.
Yeah, I had a wine, and I haven't had a lot of exposure to it. Being in Napa, I always love to support local, so I always love to kind of go and buy from wineries that are in Napa. But also, being that I work for a winery, I get the employee discounts. My wife works for a winery; she gets her employee discounts. So we don't necessarily venture off Napa.
Now, which one,
that often.
just quickly, does she work for?
Plumjack Winery. The
Okay.
Plumjack Wines, who own Kate, Odette, and then they're the Plumjack Group. So they have restaurants and nightclubs in San Francisco.
I like their wine tasting room.
Yeah,
I actually bought one of those aerators that you put on the wine.
the animals.
Yeah, the animals.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it was like a unicorn head.
yeah, those are awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
they have a rhinoceros. They have a giraffe. I mean, they're pretty
Elephant.
cool.
They have
Yeah,
they have a ton
They're
of them.
really well made. I mean, these are heavy
Yeah.
metal pours. Yeah, they're really.
I'm
cool.
waiting for someone to make a Star Wars version.
I'm sure it's coming. Yeah. I'm sure it's coming. Yeah, so she works there. So we haven't really ventured out a lot, but the Washington region up north,
Okay.
that's up and coming. There's a lot of great wineries that are coming out of Washington. A good amount of Merlot is being grown out there. But I would say Oregon and their Pinots, the Willamette Valley in Oregon.
Okay.
I want to say that's probably if I go to the store thinking I want to buy something that's not Napa, I'm probably gonna go buy something that's from the Willamette Valley in Oregon.
Okay.
But there's so many wines out there.
Yeah.
It's hard to really pick. But yeah, if I would say out of the top of my head any regions, I would say the Willamette Valley in Oregon.
Yeah.
They have some pretty nice Pinots.
So Saturday night, I went to the House of Prime Rib. In fact, went with Tony.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Have a
So
look.
afterwards, when there's a wine bar, and I forgot the name of it, but it's one block down from House of Prime Rib.
Hmm.
Great wine bar. Open up the menu, and there's a long list of wines.
Hmm.
I can't read the names,
Yeah.
but they generalize the grapes.
Right.
Obviously, you see the prices.
Hmm.
And I had two glasses, two different types of wines. Phenomenal wine. I can't even recall the names. What are some tips, or how can people get familiar with different types of wines? And because sometimes, like, the one thing I've noticed, you go to a wine bar, even restaurants, you open up the wine menu, and it's so many different wines,
Hmm.
and you don't know where to start.
Exactly. It gets very, very.
It starts all blend together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it could be intimidating at points too,
Yep.
trying to pick the right bottle. And a lot of times you can pick the wrong bottle for what you're trying to have for dinner. So if you're gonna have food with it, definitely kind of know ahead of time. So you're gonna have a steak, or if you're gonna have fish, that's gonna change the wine that you're gonna order at a restaurant. But usually, of course, a lot of restaurants, they have a by the glass list. So I would recommend asking the bartender or the server to give you a little taste of one or two of their wines. And I would always ask, if the staff has a sommelier or somebody that's in charge of the wine list, ask them what is their favorite, or what they suggest, or that's something that's not necessarily going to break the bank, but it's going to really come out and really impress you. So I would interact with the staff more than trying to find out what wine I'm going to taste, or trying to look through all that list. I usually, when I go to restaurants, because I just bought a house, we always have to be really price savvy. So we have to definitely look at the prices first before I say, hey, bring me any bottle you like.
Yeah.
Um,
Bring me Opus One.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, like, oh shit, at a restaurant that's like $400.
Yeah.
So it's always about what we're gonna think about having for dinner, and if we're gonna do red or white, that's how we definitely start. Either we're gonna look at white or we're gonna look at red, and then once I start looking at red, because I have a little more of that. Okay, I know what Cabernet Sauvignons taste like. I don't know what Zinfandels and Pinots and all those taste like. I try to go somewhere in between, and I always like to buy at a restaurant wines that I would normally not necessarily get at a store, or go to the winery and buy something. So something a little different, something that I've never tasted before. So you can explore a little.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
And I would imagine most restaurants would give you a taste if you ask.
If they have it by the glass, why not? They
Yeah.
have the wine open. I'm sure. I'm thinking at least wineries in Napa, they're not trying to nickel and dime you and trying to get every buck out of the thing. If you ask for it for a taste, if I was managing the restaurant, I would be more than happy to give you a taste.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now in Napa, what's your favorite restaurant?
Man, amazing.
I know there's a lot of
yeah.
good food out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of great food. I would say, let's say, so let's take it by town. If you go to the town of Napa, Celadon in downtown Napa, that place is amazing. It's got a sort of casual bar outside patio, but the inside is really nice and fancy. The food is, I think, it's got a Mediterranean feel to it. It's really awesome, genuine service and great food. If you go to Yountville, Bistro Gentil. They have the best tomato soup and the best lemon meringue pie. It's awesome. And then Farmstead in San Helena.
That's probably my favorite restaurant.
Yeah, Farmstead right now. And out of every restaurant in Napa, I want to say Farmstead is probably my favorite. It's just consistent. Every single time you go, you're gonna have a friendly server. You're gonna have incredible food. You better make a reservation though, because they've gotten very popular, and really a lot of people go through.
Whenever I go to Farmstead,
Mhm.
there's been a few times I go without reservations, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we can make a reservation for you like in 2 days."
Exactly. Are you in town for a while?
Yeah, but if you hang around, usually someone gets up from the bar,
Yep.
and then just go to the bar and sit down and eat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely the best way to go. And then in nice days, they actually have their patio open.
Yep.
And then you can do full dinner outside as well. So it's a lot of fun.
That's just as packed too.
Oh,
Right next to Farmstead, and it might be part of Farmstead, they do olive oil tasting.
Yeah, it's part of the Longmeadow Ranch Winery, who owns the Farmstead restaurants.
Yeah.
You do olive oil, and then they offer this pretty cool either lunch and dinner where they do food and wine pairing. So they make dinner or lunch specifically paired with their wines, and it's a pretty awesome experience. I was able to do it while I was with Napa Private Tours. They hosted us there, and it was, spot on. Customized menus and all that. Having welcomed Jona to the menu, it actually kind of gave it a little extra. A little extra something there.
Yeah.
It was fun. So yeah, it's by the same people. The other day I went to Soul Bar at the Solage.
Okay.
And had probably one of the best fish tacos I've had in my life. I mean,
Really?
It was just.
I'm a huge fan of fish tacos.
Dude, go to the Soul Bar at Solage and Calistoga. Right across the street, they're building a Four Seasons
Okay.
And then Soul Bar and Solage, they're basically, I want to say less than 5 minutes away from where I work. So whenever I have business meetings or whenever I'm trying to tell a guest that, if they're looking for a really nice high end restaurant, because it's definitely pricey,
Okay.
go to the Solage and Soul Bar.
I'll let you know next time I go up there. We'll
Yeah.
go get some fish tacos and
Heck
visit
yeah.
your winery.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
cool.
let me know. For sure.
Just quickly, while we end the show,
Yeah.
just let people know where they can buy the wine, or if it's just exclusive to the winery.
We do have a little bit of distribution. Not a lot on retails. You'll find a little bit in restaurants, but we do have a few wines that are made for definitely distribution. So
You'll buy it on the website.
You can always buy it on the website. But we always love to take care of our guests, even if they're buying. You can always call us at the winery, 707-921-2603. We always take phone orders. We can ship a lot of the wine all over the United States. We can actually now ship to England, Hong Kong, Japan. We're definitely getting our wines to the international markets as well.
Okay.
But for distribution, you'll find us in a few wine shops, more of specialty wine shops, and then a few different restaurants. But we do have a lot of wines like this Atlas Peak Cabernet Sauvignon that you tried. That's winery exclusive, so you won't find that anywhere else.
Okay.
And we do have a lot of wines that are winery exclusive, where you can only buy it directly through us. Now you can buy it at the website, of course, but you won't find it out in retail stores and whatnot. But we have we call it a connoisseur's tasting, where we do a cave tour, and we basically take a tour of the property. We go through our caves, our production facility, and then we sit down and do a tasting of 5 wines, and that's accompanied by a charcuterie board. So we have basically 2 different cheeses, 2 or 3 meats, and a couple of dried fruits. How long is that tour? About 90 minutes.
Okay.
90 minutes, and it's $60 per guest. And of course,
60 is pretty cheap for Napa these days.
These days. But being in Calistoga, the price points up there are still a little lower than everywhere else, like in Rutherford or Northville. So 60 for where we are is definitely in the higher end. But yeah, I mean, you can go to this winery called Constant. They charge you $150 to taste their wines. And then there's wineries that are doing $100, $110, and that's a lot of times the price point is to weed out a lot of the guests. If you can't afford to pay $100 to taste their wine, then you probably won't be able to afford their wines anyway. So for them, it's sort of like, all right, look, we're just gonna save you your time. You can't afford our wine, so you can't taste our wine, type of thing. But I have the feeling that there are a lot of people that work extremely hard that only have one opportunity to visit the Napa Valley, and if they're not gonna buy wine, hey, we're going to give you a great experience anyway, because that's just what we do. You probably have friends that can buy a lot of great wine. So we treat everybody as we should. Everybody's a VIP in our minds. But yeah, there's a lot of wineries out there that the price point is basically just to kind of set themselves apart. That way they can only get qualified buyers, basically. But for us, it's we want to give you a great experience. Besides that cave tour, we also do a regular daily flight, and that's $30 per guest. And we go basically through 5 wines, and it's a seated experience, and it's usually 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And we want to make sure that when you go in, you come out satisfied, extremely happy, and that you want to tell your friends about us.
Yeah, nice. So, and then the prices vary from $20.
20 all the way to 125.
Okay.
Yeah. So depending, we have a couple of whites, 22 all to 35, and then we have reds that are from 35 to 125.
Okay.
So yeah, good mix.
Okay,
for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming out to the podcast. Thanks for sharing the wine, and excited to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. This is great, and we got to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Make sure you have me next time. I appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do the podcast from the winery next time.
Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Definitely make that happen. Awesome, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I want to thank my producer, Sam Lemon, for putting this podcast together. And also want to thank Jona Mendoza for coming by and being on the podcast. Thank you for Clos Pegase. Make sure to go out and visit their winery if you're ever up in Napa. Make sure to follow them on Facebook, share their content, and please like and share this podcast. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.